Let me start with the obvious here, that giving a talk on why I stopped using the N-word is an ipso facto admission that I have used the N-word. And if you think it's uncomfortable to hear what you're about to hear, try to be me and to say what I'm about to say, and I appreciate your graciousness today. The fact that I have said it, I'll share a little bit about that, but why I stopped, or maybe I should say why I am purposing to stop saying it, is much more important. My journey to this day begins at 17 years old when I dropped out of high school and left my all-white world in Orlando, Florida, just outside of Orlando, and relocated here to a little church in College Park, Georgia. I was not raised in church, never went to church, and that's another TED Talk by itself. But I ended up going here, leaving my senior year, enrolling in ministry school, and spent 2 years in this church in College Park in ministry school, and kind of went on a transformational journey that I'm still on to this day. This is a quarter of a century ago. And during this time, I also got a new nickname, and my name is Michael Smith, but my new nickname became White Mike, and I think through my photo, it'll say all the 1,000 words. This is White Mike here with his roommate during ministry school, and this is White Mike there on the left walking into ministry school, and that's White Mike being installed into ministry with my pastor and spiritual father. I think you're seeing a trend here. And this is White Mike as a youth pastor, teaching youth in this church in Atlanta, and again, you see a trend. And the name White Mike, where'd it come from? People would walk into a room and say, "Have you seen Mike?" And they would say, "Mike who?" Smith apparently too difficult to grasp, so White Mike became as they say in Ace Ventura, this how they know you. This how they knew. Now, this continued in my adult life when I would travel out of town at other pastors' functions, preaching different ministry things. Whatever preachers that I was with, wherever I was the white guy. And I left an all-white world in Orlando and literally spent about 12, 13 years in a world where it was less than 1%. I mean, and that's even with a margin of error. The church, when I started, there was about 1,000 people, and I left, it was about 20,000 people. And, you know, if there was 100 or 200 white people, that would be generous. Even in my social, this is a Christmas party with some family and friends. You can barely see White Mike in there. He's in there. And this is even my wedding party. And so they say, who's the intruder? That's White Mike's dad. Short of my some other family members and a dear friend that you can't see who's actually taking the picture, there's no white people around. So this is me. And when I've been on this journey, and this church is still my church family. As a matter of fact, I'll be leaving here to go there and spend a week in a conference. I met a lot of beautiful people and learned a lot of stuff. I also learned some ugly stuff about me and about the world in which we live, and it's some of that ugliness that I want to shine some light on today. When I got there to Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, I learned about the N-word. And, of course, I knew the N-word, I was 17, so I knew it. But I learned there are two versions of the N-word. The one I was familiar with ends with an E-R, N-I-G-G-E-R. And I got up there and learned one that ends not with an E-R, but with an A. It's N-I-G-G-A. And I was shocked at this because I, again, leave my all-white world, and I stumble into this place where G-A is used a lot. A lot. And it was kind of took me back, at first because I wasn't sure if people were trying to be funny or are people aware that I'm there and it was thrown around a lot. Sometimes it was positive, if it was preceded by the word my, it was positive, and sometimes it was kind of aggressive. So if it was my GA, it was good, or if I'd preach a sermon or something that was good, they'd say, my GA. But then if somebody's wondering where I was at, and it was GA, where are you? It was a different thing. So, so not only did I hear it, I was called it, and this threw me, And again, I showed you my roommate earlier. He got me my first job, first month in Atlanta. Again, I'm 17. He's a manager at McDonald's. He puts me at McDonald's. There's a white store manager, and then me. I'm a maintenance technician. I clean up the vomit on the playground, that kind of a deal. And they introduced me to the staff, and they say, "This is Mike." And I meet this 6'6" guy. I mean, you understand, all white world, and I'm in this all black world. And this guy that introduced me, he's on the grill. He's flipping some things. They say, "This is our Mike. He's our new maintenance guy." And the guy reaches over the counter and calls me the N-word. He's like, "GA, how you doing?" And I remember freezing, thinking, look, man, if you want to fight, I don't want any trouble. I don't know what this is. And so that's 30 days in, and so this would go on. And so when I came on staff with the ministry, they'd be in a staff meeting, and they'd say, look, all you GAs be on time next week. White Mike, that's you too. White GAs too, you be on time. And so I'm kind of in this, and it would be friends and family. We'd be going out shopping, and one of the ladies I had pictured earlier, she would say, she would say to me and my best friend who was in my wedding, she would say, look, you GAs don't go out there and spend all the money. You guys come home and you're spending no more than this. And she would look at me and put her finger in my face and she'd say, yeah, you GA too, I'm talking to you too. So this is kind of a major growth a transformation. So hearing it and being called it eventually led to this idea of saying it. And saying it became a great portion of entertainment for the people I was around, because I was always encouraged to say it. And we'd be in a fellowship or at some sort of lunch or some sort of event or convention or whatever, and in downtime, somebody would inevitably bring up, let's get the white guy to say the N-word. And I didn't know a lot, but I'm not a fool, so I knew not to do this. So, and it would become interesting. They say it, White Mike, say GA, come on, say it. And then people would offer money. I'll give you $10 if you say it. I'll give you $10. And then people would pool money. We'll all give you $10 if you say it. And I wouldn't. I just would not say it, which would, create more laughter the more, nervous I got. And one time we were eating. It was the first time I tried chitlins, which is another TED Talk. But we were eating, it was in Thomasville, Georgia, and come on, White Mike, say it, come on, White Mike, say it. And one of my dear friends, he's a pastor now, Reginald Ezell, he was in some of the photos, but he said, he was over in the corner, he was eating, and they were all, nudging me, and he says this, Reginald says this, he says, oh, he says it. He won't say it around us, but he says it, which the whole place burst into laughter. And then I went from red to red, Ted Red, I'm Ted Red now, and they told me to stay on the rug. I was like, red rug. Anyway, so I state, but their laughter about he says it, he won't say it around us, took the focus off me, and I escaped again. This went on for about a decade. And one day they had an anniversary service, church anniversary service, and they asked me, I had done comedy and drama and stuff when I was in school, and my pastors, my spiritual parents said, oh, just tell Mike to do something at the banquet, just get up and do something funny, which, I don't know, so okay. So, I did it, and I put together this little comedy thing. I was one of the last people up for the night. It was about 10 minutes, and the comedy was amateurish. It was, it's nothing, but it was done with love, and it was 3,000 people there. And it was a black tie event, rented out this huge conference center, and the mayor's there, and, city council people are there, and celebrities are there, and it's just a huge, and so they choose to give White Mike the mic the night, and so my last part of my bit was my journey with the N-word, and I made all of their dreams come true. Every person that had offered me money, every person that had nudged me on, I closed out my act with my discovery of the N-word since I'd been in Georgia for about 10 years. And comedically speaking, although the writing was terrible, the love that folks had for White Mike, it killed. People were in tears. People were standing up, clapping, pointing, yelling, and it was just like, a grand experiment, to try this in a room full of 3,000 people, again, with 10 white people out of 3,000. And so I got to the end, and I acknowledged, I said, I know some of you are here and you don't like what I'm saying, and it's making you nervous, and it really bothers you, and you're kind of put off by what I'm saying, and I just want to tell you two things that I've learned before I quit, and that is this. And I ended with this line, dropped the mic, and walked off the stage. So now the place is nuts. I'm backstage putting taking this stuff off, and it's White Mike, GA, please, oh my gosh, GA, please. I'm standing in the parking lot. People are stopping their cars to come over and hug me. I can't believe it, man, GA, you crazy. It was all this kind of, and this has gone on. That was late 90s, so 15, 17 years. People still stop me today and say, GA, please. Now, the interesting thing about this, my talk now is bothering people here, making people uncomfortable. And had you caught me 15 years ago, this would have been my same answer to you. Because I didn't care. Because I knew who I was. And I knew the credibility and the relationship equity that I had. But when I talk about stopping saying the N-word, this is the first N-word that I stopped saying. And the reason I stopped saying this was not about did I have a quote-unquote pass, or could it be used in certain groups, or did I have the credibility with the people that love me and the families that had taken me in, but I started noticing how it empowered other white people around me. And I was amazed to see that people rode my coattail and would walk into settings and use the word under the auspices of comedy, but it always had a tinge of negativity. It was always anchored in some sort of stereotype. And I remember when people would say it, it would be like the record scratching, and everybody would stop and it would arrest. And I realized that they were basing their actions emboldened. And it kind of came out it was kind of like said as a joke, but you could hear some ugliness behind it. And it was kind of like people that hadn't bought in or hadn't invested were trying to maybe cover some ugliness through, kind of vicariously through me. And it really grieved me. I remember watching Dave Chappelle a number of years later, who talked about that what's my guy? Sunset Strip. Richard Pryor. He realized that what he did at comedy to try to point out something negative, to try to highlight something that needed to be dealt with, really empowered people to use it in an untoward manner. So I stopped using the N-word. But now the N-word is really what's at issue here. And this word, N-I-G-G-E-R, is totally different. When I moved to Jacksonville and relocated, I started to notice the systemic issues that were going on in Jacksonville. And I really, as a pastor, said, I really want to deal with this and teach on it. And up came the idea of the N-word. Now, to appreciate my relationship with the ER word, you have to go way back, and you have to go to my childhood. And I would have, I come from a whole group of people, a family that use statements like, look, I'm not trying to be racist or nothing, I'm just saying. And whatever is following the words, I'm just saying, you understand. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And so this is kind of where I came from. As a matter of fact, one of the patriarchs of my family, I was about 12 years old, pulled me aside one day. There was a black gentleman working outside, doing some yard work, and he pulled me aside. He said, hey, boy, come here. I said, yeah. He said, you see that guy out there? I said, yeah. He said, I don't care what he drives, what he wears, where he lives, or how much money he has. He'll never be as good as you. He said, because you're white, and he'll always be an ER. He said, you remember that forever. And this shocked me because I knew to reject that. Overt prejudice, overt racism, it just affected me deeply, so much so that when I saw my mother later, I said, hey, you're not going to believe what so-and-so told me. And I told him, and my mom, I can't tell you what all was said. It involved a lot of, you drunk redneck SOB, don't say that to my kid. There was a lot of drama. It's like a mini Springer episode. And I remember just saying, that's not who we are. And I remember being told that's not who we are. But as I prepped for this series on systemic racism and dealing with the N-word, I had this form of supernatural recall. And though I would have sworn that I wasn't prejudiced, and though I was sworn that I had nothing to do with that, I recalled 15 years later the statement, oh, he says it, but he doesn't say it around us. And I thought about the N-word. And nobody ever taught it to me, nobody ever said it to me, say this, learn this, but in my environment, so much of my conversation was dominated by this word from my childhood that I had never realized all my years in Atlanta. I mean, N-word was everywhere. We carried sticks in our cars that were N sticks. We, when people would patch something together in a sloppy way, it was in-rigged. Or when you tried to show off, when somebody showed up at a family reunion with nice stuff, we called them in-rich. And though I had rejected the overt racism, that's not really where it's dangerous. It's in the corners of our souls that it's dangerous. And I had absorbed it environmentally and didn't even know it was there. And I mean, I can go on and on, nursery rhymes and things that I would recite to myself riding down the street on my bike. I had no idea all that was in me. Now, please, I'm not suggesting that all white people say this word. I'm not suggesting that all white people come from this environment, but I am suggesting that it's possible to be an associate pastor at a 20,000-person black church and never realize that this stuff still lay somewhere inside you. I'm suggesting that it's possible to have blind spots so deep that you can be functioning racially and sharing at work and everywhere else and not even realize the depths of the corners of the ugliness of your own soul. The issue with the N-word is about public and private. And what I mean by public and private is the N-word has lost traction publicly. When my parents were little, you could say it publicly and nobody would think anything about it. But now we have it privately, and we try to build a huge wall between public and private, and we hope that whatever's said privately doesn't hop over the wall. And how many times do we see somebody caught on tape? or a celebrity or something, and what they're saying is, wow, public and private is a matter of present company. Certain things you can't say publicly because present company won't allow it, so we try to say things privately, but when private becomes public, then we have to apologize, and I didn't mean, and I was only trying to say, I ain't trying to be racial or nothing, and we try to fix, but really public and private is not the issue. That's not the battlefront with the N-word. The real battle is inwardly. Public and private are a matter of present company. Inward is a matter of core beliefs. Inwardly is how we interpret events. Inwardly is how we assign guilt or innocence. Inwardly is how we create a vacuum for negative expectations just based on skin color, just based on racial definitions and norms, and it's inwardly. So we say, I've removed the N-word publicly. I know I can't get away. I got to be careful privately, but that's not really where the battle is. It's the inward issue that's the battle. Hitler spoke in Third Reich philosophy as Blut und Boden, blood and soil. That there's something about loyalty to German blood and loyalty to German soil that was valued. And I will tell you this as a white American, first generation born after civil rights, there's something in my blood and something in my soil that may not articulate the N-I-G-G-E-R, but the construct that it represents still echoes inside me. It echoes in ugly parts of me. My work, I'm a recipient of a Martin Luther King Trailblazer Award for seeking racial justice and dedicated to equality. And it doesn't matter what you label on the outside. I know the echoes from my blood and from my soil. And this causes me difficulty to interpret events. You see, it's hard for me to have a first response when I see a 12 or 14-year-old girl in a bikini, face down in the grass, elbow on her neck, knee in her back by a law enforcement officer. It's hard for me to see that young girl because what cries out to me is the theyness. The theyness of my forefathers, the theyness of my land cries out and says, well, there's got to be an explanation here. I know you see the video, but what happened ahead of time? Or I know you saw this young man shot, and I know you see his graduation picture, but what was he really doing? Where does this vacuum of negative expectation come from? It cries out from the blood that's been passed down to me. It cries out from the soil. So I don't snap to innocence. I don't snap to seeing humanity. I snap to some sort of negative expectation and construct, not because I haven't removed it from my mouth, but because I still need to scrape the insides on how I interpret day in, day out things to remove the theyness. I've got to move from theyness to we-ness because the theyness lets me know, well, in 50-50 events where he might be lying and she might be lying, I let my theyness of my blood and soil interpret those events. Public and private is not the issue, inward. When I say, have I stopped saying the N-word, I haven't said G-E-R in 25 years. I've not said G-A in 13 or 14 years. But I will tell you this, inwardly, I'm trying to get rid of the scream of where I came from. Inwardly, I'm trying to get rid of that negativity. I'm looking for new blood and new soil. What I'm really wondering is what I'm going to lean down and whisper into the ears of my own children. What I need to say is not, do you see them? I need to lean down on my daughter and say, you see her? She's you. You see her? That's you. Why? Because maybe I can pass something different down to my blood. Maybe I can make better effort to change my soil so that the screams and the cries that were passed down to me, maybe it may not be as loud. My children have never heard me say it, never heard me endorse it. They'll certainly hear it, but they'll never have an affirmation of the theyness from me. I've stopped saying it outwardly. I definitely don't say it privately. And I made it my life goal to rid its normalcy from my inward. Because I don't want to walk in theyness. It's we-ness that we need for a brave new world. Thank you all very much.